Jack had just moved into his new apartment in a quiet, aging neighborhood. It was small but cozy, with creaky floors, worn-out wood, and a view that overlooked the street. The place was everything he needed for a fresh start, a chance to leave his troubles behind and focus on himself. The first night was uneventful. Jack unpacked a few boxes, settled into his space, and drifted off to sleep, the muffled city sounds lulling him to rest. It was a subtle, prickling feeling on the back of his neck, a sense that he wasn't entirely alone. As he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, he felt an inexplicable urge to look out his window, as if something beyond the glass was silently calling him. Shrugging off the feeling, he closed his eyes and drifted off. The third night, the sensation returned, stronger this time, stirring him from sleep. Jack sat up in bed, his heart racing, the strange compulsion to check his window overwhelming. He glanced over and caught his breath. Across the street, standing in the dim light of an opposite building's window, was a woman. Her face was pale, almost ghostly in the faint light, and her dark eyes stared blankly out into the night. She seemed to be staring directly at him, her expression fixed, unblinking. Jack felt a chill crawl up his spine, but shook it off. Maybe she was just looking out her window, lost in thought. He laughed it off, even waving a hand as if to break the tension. But she didn't respond. She didn't even blink. Jack tried to brush it off as just one of those strange city moments. People were strange sometimes, right? The next day, Jack tried to dismiss the encounter, convincing himself it was nothing to worry about. But when night fell again, he found himself instinctively looking out the window, scanning the other building. She was there. Same place, same expressionless stare. She hadn't moved, hadn't blinked, hadn't changed. And now it was as though her gaze was fixed directly on him. A feeling of unease started to settle in, gnawing at him. Over the next few days, he couldn't resist checking the window each night. And each night, she was there, unmoving. By the end of the week, Jack had started to notice something more disturbing. The woman was always in the same clothes, with the same blank expression, her face pale and still as a statue. And no matter what time of night he looked, her gaze was locked onto him, as if she were watching him specifically. Jack's curiosity soon turned into obsession. He found himself staring back at her, hoping to catch some sign of life, a blink, a nod, any movement at all. But she remained still, her dark eyes following him as he paced around his apartment. Sleep became a struggle, her face etched into his mind whenever he closed his eyes. And sometimes, as he lay in bed, he swore he heard faint whispers, almost as if they were coming from across the street, drifting in through the cracks at his windows. One evening, he returned late from work, feeling exhausted and on edge. He told himself he wouldn't look out the window, that he would ignore her. But as the minutes passed, the urge grew stronger. He finally gave in. Walking over to the window, heart pounding, she was closer now. Instead of standing back in the shadows, her face was pressed near the glass, her empty gaze more intense than ever, her eyes following his every move. The way she looked at him, it was like she was waiting for him, expecting something from him. Jack's unease turned into full-blown paranoia. He began drawing his blinds, avoiding the window altogether, trying to rid himself of her presence. But even then, he couldn't shake the feeling that she was there, just behind the blinds, staring at him. One night, the fear became too much. Driven by desperation, Jack decided to go across the street to confront this strange neighbor and end his torment. He put on his jacket, crossed the darkened street, and entered the old building, his footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. He found her apartment and knocked, his fist trembling as he waited for a response. Nothing, just silence. He knocked again, louder this time, and finally, an older man emerged from the neighboring unit, looking at him with curiosity. "Excuse me," Jack said, his voice wavering. "Do you know the woman in that apartment? The one who's always at the window?" The man's face went pale, his eyes widening. "No one's lived in that apartment for years," he said slowly. "The last tenant, she died there. Young woman, kept to herself. People say well, they say she fell, but no one knows for sure." Jack's blood ran cold. "Fell," he repeated, barely able to speak. "From the window?" The man nodded, a shadow passing over his face. "They found her at the bottom of the building. People say her spirit lingers there, waiting for someone to notice her, to let her in." Jack backed away, his heart racing. He didn't want to hear any more. He turned, stumbling out of the building and rushing back to his apartment, the man's words ringing in his ears. Back in his apartment, he locked the door, his breath shallow and frantic, his mind whirling, trying to make sense of it all. But the image of her face, pale and haunting, refused to leave him. He forced himself not to look at the window. He wouldn't let her haunt him any longer. But as he walked toward his bed, he felt a pull, an instinctive urge to look, to see if she was still there. Finally, he gave in. Slowly, he lifted the edge of the blinds, just enough to peer through. And she was there, closer than ever, her face pressed against the glass, her dark eyes wide and staring. For the first time, she moved, her mouth parting slightly, forming his name. Jack. He stumbled back, heart pounding, but his eyes remained fixed on the window, horrified by what he saw. She wasn't outside. She was inside, her reflection merging with his own in the glass. Her hand pressed against his window, as if reaching out for him. And in that chilling moment, he understood. She didn't just want to be seen, she wanted to be let in. As he backed away, her face followed him in the reflection, a twisted smile forming as her cold whisper echoed in his ears. "Let me in. I've been waiting."